Welcome to the show.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having
Yeah,
me.
it's a long time no see prior to this as well.
I was trying to figure it out actually. How long do you think it's been?
I mean, it's got to be years.
Like to the beat was the last time I saw you was when you were in the record store there.
Really, not like a venue. We weren't out like at the same venue. I'm not saying like you came to my show or I came to your show. Like we weren't out like at a show we both wanted to go to. Or
I don't think so.
there's
I
got to
think
be something.
I was thinking about it, but I feel like we run in different circles, but yet it's under the same umbrella. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Okay. Yeah. The umbrella of love,
The umbrella.
an infinite
you know,
inspiration.
that's funny. I had a present for you because I mean, originally when we spoke about this, I was going to come to your place. That was my assumption, anyways. So I had a present. It was a CD of the first time you interviewed me about 15 years ago on OneGroove.com.
Get out of town.
Do you remember that?
I mean, sure. Well, One Groove before it was Iceberg.
Iceberg.
Right. So was it when I was doing the show on Iceberg or was it One Groove?
I think it was OneGroove because I remember it specifically because first of all I was super nervous because Jello was asking me on his show and I was like
Yeah.
not I anyways I was just starting. We'll just leave it at that. And the funny thing was is I had just started going to college. I was going to Centennial, and I didn't have an email address back then. So at the end of the show, you asked me, "Do you have an email address so people can get a hold of you?" And I was brand new to this concept because I'm old. They didn't have computers back then all over the place, but I remember it was my first name, last names at centennialcollege.ca, and it was this long ass email address, and you made fun of me about it on air, and I was like, man, man, I got to change that.
Times have changed here. There's
Times have
definitely
changed.
no teasing that's going to be happening. In fact, it's funny you bring that up. I want to say most people, I'm going to assume, especially a lot of the new listeners, they have no idea how I guess internet streaming here in Toronto really became a thing, and it did back. I think it was 2001. It was Iceberg Media, and then it moved into I
Yep,
think something that was OneGroove.com. This was
yep,
Don Burns, David Marsden, I think that were spearheading. Jen
that's right.
Polyozotis was there as well. Shine was doing engineering. St. Pete was doing stuff that was there. There was a lot of really cool people that were behind the scenes trying
It
to
was.
push internet as radio.
I loved going to that studio. I used to just go there to hang out, just to be in the foyer while you guys were doing your stuff. And every once in a while, I would get called into play, but
That
it
was
was
that
just
was a
such a
thing. Sure, if you hung out and somebody
ah.
wasn't around, you were pulled into the studio. That was that place, which is really
That was
cool.
it. That was it. It was like back then, you if you wanted to be sort of in the right spot, you always had to position yourself, which is why every Thursdays it was at Play to Record getting promos. Yeah, I don't know if you ever had to do any of that, but trying to get a promo listened to at Play to Record back in the day was like a 5 hour journey. Like those guys would play like the entire house record, and then from drum and bass came on, it would be like, all right, you guys ready? Like, is that it? You good? You want to buy it? You had to make your mind up on the spot. But yeah, back then it was about positioning. So yeah, One Groove. We go back a long way, man.
You mean physical positioning inside the retail store,
Physical. Oh, for
right?
sure. It's always all about physical positioning, man. For sure. Everything's positioning. Everything you do, put
Did
yourself in
did
the right
did, did
spot.
you did you puff up? Did you puff up so that you could be like, I'm here too?
Nah, I didn't do that. I was like behind the scenes guy. I was like the introvert. I didn't know anybody, man. I came from a completely different scene, man. I was part of the ska rude boys like mod scene before I got into this. So
So
when I
then let's
transitioned,
get right into it, James.
all right,
What is the first bite for you for drum and bass? If you
the
came from
first,
the Rude Boy Ska thing, what happened? Where did you land? How did you get here?
I actually remember this story. I went camping with a friend of mine, and he had a Goldie cassette tape in the car. So we were driving up to Algonquin, which was a bit of a drive. So you just tired of listening to Stone Roses and Beastie Boys. So we threw this tape in, and it was old hardcore. So it was very different. It was like nothing I'd ever heard of before, and it was just incredible. I was just so taken by these sounds that were just so abstract, and it had and the cassette cover art had an ecstatic like stamp on it, so it had an address. So after listening to that tape a few 100,000 times, I went down there and I met Eamon, And the rest was history from there, man. Just used to go there 3, 4 times a week, buying cassettes, learning the music, just becoming fixture in that place. And I guess that was kind of what it was, Goldie, so to speak.
Goldie, would you say was your giant bite that you were like, I gotta contribute?
Well, it was completely different. Well, I guess no, that's different because contributing and participating, like, your levels of participation in the scene can vary, right? But I guess when I wanted to start throwing events, that was more out of survival. You know what I mean? Because
What
if you
type of
wanted to,
survival are you talking about?
well, if you wanted to play back in the day, um, at best, you would probably get an opening slot. There was just a lot of guys, man. It was like there were raves back then. They were going 12 hours, so there was more DJs, more time to play. So when things migrated back to nightclubs, so all of a sudden you go from 12 hours to like 5 hours. So your whole DJ roster basically gets cut in half. So if you're a new guy like me and you're jumping in, you're not getting a prime time slot. You're lucky if you get an opening slot, and you take it. You'd be thankful for it. So I guess after a few years of opening, you kind of want to move up and play a little bit harder. And to do that, you kind of have to create your own work. So I started my own company, me and some friends, and that was kind of how I started throwing events.
What year was this?
That's a good question. I would say 2000 and something. For some reason, I don't know. This is where age is gonna get me, bro. You're
we
gonna
don't we
have to
don't
be
want
gentle.
you to be specific. That doesn't help
Yeah, like
us.
2000-ish. I'd say about 20 years ago is when I started, roughly.
Was
Roughly.
it a struggle for you to find the venues to put the parties in?
No, not really. There's always a club or a venue or a bar, somebody that wants to make a little extra money. So if you can go in there and just be like, "Hey, want to make some money?" and you could, if you sell it right and you're not an idiot, you can pretty much get any venue you want.
Did you find
Really.
that there was a pushback from the venue owners and operators because of the genre of music that you guys were going to be
After a
promoting?
while, initially when I started, there wasn't too many problems with the raves going on, but as things started to progress, as things changed because of people making poor decisions at parties, so it kind of changes it for everybody. So when that became, I guess, the darker side of the rave scene, so to speak, became more prevalent, then it was a little harder to get venues because they didn't want to associate their name with what they thought we were bringing to the table, which, I mean, we've never had a problem to this day. I've never had a problem at an event that we weren't able to contain, on our own.
Which is something to be thankful for, right?
I am
Because
very
there's so
thankful.
many there's so many different degrees of stuff that could happen, from a sound system, crashing out, to potentially someone slipping at the doorway and getting hurt, hurting
Hmm.
their leg or something like that.
Hmm.
I'm wondering though, what was happening back in early 2000s with drum and bass in Toronto? When did you feel that there was an opportunity to start throwing parties, to get people into the door? That, because like you said, there was already so much happening. So if there was a lot of stuff happening and the stuff that was happening was prominent, how did you find your way? What was the niche that you used?
I probably used my peers. You see, because I felt like there was a big influx of DJs who were starting to try their hand at throwing parties or becoming a DJ back then. But there wasn't enough work. As I said, with the bigger parties going on, they became fewer and far between. And those parties, those lineups were pretty much set. And that was it. That's just the way it was. And you respected it and you carried on. So my concept with my company Soul in Motion was originally to have a roster of DJs, and every show we did, we'd feature one of those DJs as if it were a headliner. And I'd build the flyers accordingly. So, it would be like top to bottom. So it was like, on this weekend, it would be this guy who probably would never get to play a set. Because the thing is when you're playing these sets with these bigger companies, it's probably an opening or a closing set, which kind of determines the sound that you play. Maybe not always the sound you want to play. So if you want to go crazy and go a little bit more harder, this was the opportunity that I created for people and myself, of course, to go in and play a primetime slot amongst your peers. So it was almost like it was another, I don't know, another level where we could build our own brands and move ourselves up. And it worked for a lot of us, I think.
How were people during that time, besides the parties, getting exposed to drum and bass.
Uh,
It wasn't on commercial radio, and for higher
yeah.
BPM or halftime BPM, depending on how you want to look at it. I mean, Prodigy was just kind of starting to break through, but
Hmm.
there wasn't 10 prodigies that were out there that were doing. I still say Outkast's "Hey Yeah" is a drum and bass song. People all the time like, I'm like, but it is.
You know, it's funny. I could have been hearing things, but I remember A-Track. Do you remember A-Track from Montreal?
Still following him. I haven't stopped all these years. He's fucking amazing.
Is he still going? That
Are
guy?
you kidding me?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like, and he's and like all kinds of like offshoots. I know he's recorded with his brother, who's one half of Chromeo. He's done stuff with Armand Van Helden together. They call themselves Duck Sauce. He's got tons of
Really?
yeah. He runs a label. He's constantly touring. He's got all kinds of different videos that are on his Twitter and Instagram nonstop doing different routines. No,
Wow.
he hasn't stopped. If anything, it's like he's leveled up nonstop.
That's crazy.
Super
Okay.
sick. Yeah.
He played a World of Drum and Bass at the Cool House. I think it was the first one. It was one of those shows. I'm not sure. It may have been a Labor of Love, but either way, he came down to play it, and he ended with an Outcast tune, and it didn't go over. It sounded like drum and bass, but it was like people were not biting it, man. So I guess to
Why do
answer
you
your
think that might be? Is there a code that exists within drum and bass that if it does reach, I guess, a level of certain level of commercial success, it's not right anymore?
I can't speak for drum and bass as a whole, but I can definitely speak for myself. Yeah, when it gets to a certain level of popularity, I tend to, I'm not into it.
So then,
Like,
what about Goldie Timeless? This wasn't a small album, or Ronnie Size and Represent. I mean, that won the Mercury Award. This
mhm.
is this is isn't that popular?
Well, I mean, yes, respected, popular within its genre, and it did break out and got all kinds of, notoriety, which is good. I guess I mean, I don't know, man. It's music, right? It's subjective. Whatever you want from it is what you'll take from it. And I'm just old, so I just tend to be grumpy about a lot of things. So if
So
something
then,
gets really
what
popular,
did
I'm
you want from
like,
drum and bass? Then what did you want? I mean, you threw parties. You said it was out of survival. You wanted to play. You definitely want people to hear you. You wanted to get your peers involved. You wanted to have you wanted to throw something where you could get people together, dancing, having fun.
mhm.
What was it for you then? In,
That was what it migrated into. Originally, it started out as creating an opportunity to play for you and your peer group. But after a while, when it started to grow legs and you started to actually get bookings and whatnot, you started to be able to throw parties for different reasons, and you kind of, for me and our crew, which Soul in Motion was DJ Spins, obviously you know him, Scott Free. We we always kind of covered all the different genres of drum and bass amongst ourselves. So we like to push really new music. So back then, we brought a lot of guys in for the first time because I think the mandate was to expose the music and not just jump up or raga jungle, which for the longest time I feel like Toronto exclusively only listened to, to an extent rather. But we wanted to get something a little different out there and get some different producers and some different sounds, and it was good because people bit, they got into it, and it was like a rush for us to just see people enjoying drum and bass from all different walks of life, and that became the point, you know.
what was the thing that happened where you and Scott ended up on radio? I have no idea if Spins was with you guys, to be honest. I mean, but I know that you and Scott, you guys were doing university radio.
So I started doing prophecy radio about 10, a little over 10 years ago. So it was Marcus and Gremlins and Prime who were doing it, and people just moved on in their life, and it just got passed down to me. So when I was doing it for a bit, then I brought Scott in. Now we've got a couple more hosts in, Polaris and MC Valiant. So it's the four of us that are doing it right now, and it's been going. We're like 20 plus years. We're the longest running on air drum and bass radio show in North America. So we have that distinction, which is pretty cool. And yeah, we're still going strong, man. I mean, we're not able to go into the studio anymore because of COVID, so we're all pre-recording. So it's been frustrating because my show is usually riddled with me complaining about bad Uber services and really good Chinese food, but I can't do that anymore.
Well, 50% of it you could. I mean, there's still lots of
That's
good food
true.
you could get to your door if you wanted to.
That's true. That's true.
What do
Yeah.
you what do you what's the vibe like right now, knowing that you guys are not able to get together to go into the studio to produce the show? Has it changed the content for you guys? Is
it's
the
it's changed it for me because now we have schedules when we have to have it pre-recorded. There's a bit more structure in terms of how we have to produce the show, and it kind of takes away the I guess that sort of freedom of just going in and playing a set, so to speak, for 2 hours. You know what I mean? Um, Not being able to bring in guests and communicate on the radio has been the hardest part. I mean, it's just as much as a 2 hour mix. Now, Scott and the other guys actually all have microphones, so I don't think their shows have changed too much. Me on the other hand, I have not got a setup just yet to do that. So it's been a little harder for me personally, but they seem to be doing good. Show's doing good. Everything's fine. We just did a fundraiser and we're doing quite well. Like we're always getting the support from our listeners. So yeah, show's doing pretty good now.
what about you at home? Are you still jamming nonstop now that you're not able to get out there and play music the way that you were? You were super active in the scene prior to the pandemic shutting everything down.
Yeah.
And then now there's the big halt that's happened for you. What's your vibe? Like, what are you doing at home to keep the music happening for you?
Well, we I was doing a church Sundays, which was a Sunday weekly that I started with Rick Toxic, and I've been carrying it on my own for I guess the last 3 years. So when obviously when the lockdown happened and all the clubs shut down, everything halted. So what I was doing with church was I had a roster of DJs and we had a schedule and everybody would come in and do their thing, and I just migrated that over into an online platform. So what I did was I teamed up with a fellow named Chill Will, one of the guys in the scene, one of the anchormen in the scene that keeps things going from a technical aspect, and some promoters in San Francisco who were also doing a Sunday night. So we came together, the three of us, and we started Church X Stamina, which was a 6 hour broadcast live, 3 hours of Toronto DJs and 3 hours of San Francisco DJs. And we kept that going for most of the summer just to sort of keep our heads in the game and just,
Has there
stay
been?
active.
This is wild. Has it continue? Has it going to continue now that you've started this? Like, you built a platform. You said it kept it strong in the summer. What stopped it for you?
Well, it became work. When you go to a club and you deal with all of the things you have to deal with throwing shows, and I'll leave it at that. You always have that understanding that you get to DJ at the end of the night, you know, or at some point you get to DJ, whether it's not that night or another night. To go in, plug your headphones in, and just play some tunes for an hour is very liberating. It's very freeing, man. It almost helps everything become a bit more palatable. Doing an online show, you're still dealing with a lot of the elements of throwing shows with, performers and all the other technical elements that make themselves. It's stress, man. But in this case, you have no outlet. So it became a bit more daunting. And I just felt like it was time for something a little different. We never meant for Church X Stamina to be the new institution. It was just something that we were going to do to keep our minds busy until it was time to move on to something else. And I think
Did you
that's where we all landed at the same time. We decided to just stop it.
did you expect that this pandemic would end up going as long as it did?
No, I did not.
And is that now is do you feel like that's like a thing that's also maybe it's giving you a vibe where you're like almost like a feeling like what now with the show?
Well, I mean, I've decided to. Well, when we stopped Church Stamina, I kind of decided that I wanted to just focus on prophecy. That was just something that required a bit more love, I think, from me specifically, and just doing the stream helped me sort of get a bit more focus on what was important. So it was just another reason for me to just migrate those efforts back into prophecy and keep the radio going a lot stronger than it ever was.
before the radio, I'm going to flip back actually. Before the
Hmm.
radio uh, really started kicking in, and you started up your record collection, how important was the dub plate in your set?
Oh God. Well, back in the day, when I started, I guess right around the time where I probably first met you in those One Groove days, um, I was actually cutting dub plates. I was very fortunate. I was friends with Marcus and Mystical and Sniper and Everfresh, and these guys would sort you out with music. You get a DAT, and you get to go down to, like, for me it was initially Sniper dub plate. So if you're 40 and you play drum and bass, you probably know who Big Roy is. Just big Jamaican dude. Had his studio down in Eglinton and Dufferin. You'd walk up this long staircase. There'd be like these giant dudes eating chicken and drinking Heineken. You just have to go through them to get your little dub plate pressed, so that you
Roy
could play.
cut my first dub plate.
Oh, so you know Roy.
I do. I do.
Awesome.
I went. I remember getting there. I think to myself, like, I'm at some dude's apartment. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
what could possibly be beyond this door? And firstly, the place was huge. Like, I just don't. It was weird. The building looked small, but the place was huge.
I agree. Yeah.
And but he had that room that you went into, and he had the cutting machine right there.
Hmm. Yep.
And
That was those were the days, man.
I'll never forget what the cutting. He goes, "What's on this?" And I'm like rave music. He's like, techno shit. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah,
He,
man.
and I just remember he was like, okay, and he just turned a couple knobs real quick. He's like, that'll do it then, and then he cut my plate.
Man, he
Eight
knew what he was doing.
$80 a side.
80.
Okay,
That's
maybe
it.
oh, that's what I got charged. Wait, you got
There's a scale, bro. There's a scale.
that ain't right. That ain't right.
It depends. It depends. How much plates were you cutting back then?
I mean, like one at a time. I mean, I wasn't showing up. I mean, it was gear and stuff. I mean, I sat
Yeah.
down. Uh, St. Pete and Robbie Riggs helped engineer my first track.
Okay. Wow.
Back in 2000 or 99 or 2000 when I released my first song, which was on Rob G's record label, Laid Back Records.
That's right. I
and
forgot
and
about
and
that.
yeah, it was this blue see-through blue vinyl that Rob paid extra money for, and
Nice.
uh and yeah, this was me. Yeah, I didn't have access to gear. I couldn't just sit down. There was no Ableton.
Hmm.
That wasn't until 2005 or 2006.
Right.
So it was like you had to show up somewhere, and like someone had to have the sampler, someone had to have the synth, someone had, you know what I mean? Like it was a crazy process. So
It was. It was.
so I wasn't rolling like in tracks where I'd just be like, okay, I've got like 10 freshies I can drop tonight. I'd be like, yeah, I got a new one. And then, maybe a month and a half or
Yeah.
2 months later, I got a new one again.
Nice.
So I'm
That's
assuming
it.
that if you went you pressing more than one plate at a time, it was possible to get it for,
Oh
for
yeah.
less.
Listen. Back then there. You get yeah. I mean, listen. I didn't get them right off the bat. I'll tell you, man. And I know there are other people that got way better discounts than me, but
Okay.
it was one of those things, man. But back then, if you wanted to differentiate yourself as an opening DJ from the rest of the group, dub plates was one of the ways to do it. Like, I mean,
But what's the difference from that today? Say, for example, like, you're hanging out with a bunch of producers and stuff, and they give you all their what you're
well,
shaking.
it's not like that now. There's like right now the music is so accessible to people just because of the internet that between that and I guess record mailing lists, um, music is pretty accessible if you want it to be. So I feel like back then we
I
really
mean,
had to
once it's
struggle.
released, I agree with you, but I mean, like, it's still possible to get like something to have it, a
There
while
is,
before.
yeah, no, there is. It's not like it used to be. Like back then, you'd get a guy hit you up on ICQ, and just be like, yeah, oh no, that wasn't ICQ. I just aged myself. I
Yeah,
meant,
that's
yeah, I
boom,
know.
time
Go
machine.
ahead. Uh-oh. No,
It's
I
all
meant
good.
AOL on what was it? AIM. That's what we used. It wasn't uncommon to wake up in the morning and somebody's just like, "Hey, I just made this. Take it. See what you think of it." And you just go and play it in the club, and that's how it was. Now it's just try to get on the right mailing list and hope you get those promos. But even then, there's an order into who gets what and when, which I'm learning now. But
What would you say is happening right now in drum and bass globally with the pandemic? And do you what would you forecast it as the direction? Like what's going to happen?
forecasting would be a bit tricky. Everyone's kind of using their, I mean, DJs are live streaming, they're doing their podcasts, but producers are they're selling their music now. They're trying to cut out the middleman and do their thing, whether it's Bandcamp or however they're doing it directly on their own mailing lists. But I see a lot of producers that are staying active by just selling their beats directly, which I think is great. I think it's awesome that they can do that, just to sort of stay afloat because some people require that money to keep going. In terms of what's going to happen soon, I don't know. We haven't stopped talking. We've been planning parties, and then okay, that's not going to work, or it's not too soon, or it is too soon rather. But I feel like when the time does come around, we'll be ready to pull the trigger for sure. Just don't know when.
If you could throw a party somewhere in Toronto, anywhere, no restrictions, what would that venue be?
I would like to do something at the Sunnyside Pavilion, and I have reached out to them too many
Okay.
times. So we'll just leave it at that. One day, Jello, I will. One day.
What about in your bag or box? What would you say are the three tunes that have stayed there over time, or they've left the bag and then a year passes by and you're flipping through and you're like, damn, this is the one.
That's a.
It's back in.
You see, that's a hard question because the repertoires of drum and bass that you could draw from is just so vast. To be able to pick because it's just constantly your mandate's just new music, new music. Just keep getting more music in, and if you played it 3 times, well, that's that. So
What happens if you slide in a classic? Does it stop things? Do you fear
I
the
love it.
feedback?
You know what? When I started, I used to get criticized a lot because of the way I played, which was very all over the place, so to speak. No real. I, anyways, I played a lot of different subgenres of drum and bass in one set, and I think now that actually helped me because you're versatile as a DJ. So if you want to draw on a classic, you know exactly which one to draw and where to put it, and it goes over. It goes over really well. At the end of the day, you got to think people just want to come out and dance. Not everybody wants to hear the newest dub plates, right? Like they don't know it. So you kind of want to have that balance where you're still educating people on what's coming and what's good, and not feeding them cheese, but giving them something that they enjoy too. You know what I mean? Just it's a weird balance. So I'm still trying to master that. It's only been 30 years. I'll get it.
Is there names that you feel like producer names in drum and bass right now that are on the rise that people should be looking out for? Like,
There's a lot of names to eat. Like right now, there's such a saturation of people who are just getting discovered. That the jungle sound is coming back in a way like I never thought it would, and it's great. It's better now. It's very hard to isolate even 5 people to just say, yeah, keep your eye on these guys because there's so much music right now. And that's kind of the hard part is because you have to honestly filter through a lot of it to get to it, but it's there, man. It's there. I know that's not really the answer you're looking for, but it's
no, actually, it's a perfect answer. I'm there's really sometimes you've got your place where you're like, these are the names that I'm fond of, and for you, you're like, it's like, holy shit, there's so much, and things are exploding like never before.
mhm.
Are you feeling like there's a feel right now in North America, not just Toronto, not just Canada, but just North America? Do you feel that there's a feel right now that's happening for drum and bass?
Honestly, it's really weird. Any sort of observation I have with the music right now, it's honestly it's like it's just everything's on pause. There's nothing happening right now.
Is
People
it
are
because
not.
the industry is so gig driven?
It is. I mean, that's where producers make their money. That's where the young DJs get their platform to go and do their thing. I mean, it's all in the booth, man. That's kind of where it all happens. To me, I mean, I don't produce. I've never produced. So I've never had the joy of being able to make something and then go and play it for people and watch them dance. Like Unfortunately, I haven't been able to. So I just look at everything from a DJ perspective. I've never was a producer. I've always been a DJ. So without that platform, everything's kind of like paused. We're just waiting. Like streams and podcasts and whatnot will keep you going. For me personally, it's not something that was something that I wanted to gravitate towards. Not really comfortable with a camera on me, but I like you, Josh. Straight up,
because
though, you've always been a good dude, man, over the years. So I really
cheers.
appreciate you. So of course I wanted to do this, man.
You're dynamite. I'm
Yeah,
thinking to
man.
myself because you keep the radio alive and the spirit's there, and the idea behind it is the joy of sharing. Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
So then is it that you just don't want to be on screen? Because and then what about the radio itself? I mean, there's got to be a broadcast that's happening. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think
I mean, I'm saying like online,
yeah,
like the stream
there is.
exists.
You can
So
listen online, for sure.
so why not then? Where something where perhaps you're not face forward, but still online. I guess basically my question is this: you're over there. What is
We
the
did
difference
this.
between we? Yeah, well, oh, uh, uh, yeah.
Yeah, close,
What
close it up.
what's the diff between streaming and radio?
I guess the live element.
But here we are live. I mean,
That's
granted, more people are watching on the archive, which is I mean I'm still trying to make heads or tails of it myself.
yeah.
Because yeah, for me with like viewers and shares and stuff, it's the magic's in the archive.
It
But but
is.
but here we are live. I mean, like it's super real. I mean, we're in the utility room, which is our room together. And then obviously everyone else is joining in on I don't know the near dozen networks this goes out to. I guess I'm wondering, do you not feel the connection from when we're together like this?
It really comes down to the person that you're doing it with, the way I see it. The reason I never really, I guess, gravitated towards doing the live stream thing with a camera on me was because I never really felt like it was about us. It was about the music. So to talk it's like, who cares about what I have to say? You know what I mean? Like I'm just a dude that throws
I do,
parties and well, I appreciate that, man,
and
because
and and you're
I do
so
put some
handsome.
love into it. I do try. I do try, but I mean, I try to get the music in the front, and that's not always the easiest thing to do. So, when you're on a camera, it's a weird interface to actually have somebody directly at you, looking at you, and like your mom's listening. It's just a little, it's just different. That's all. It's not something.
My mom's
I,
listening too, James.
nice, very nice. Hey, mom.
Any shout before we get wrapped up? Um, any shout outs that you'd like to get out there? Something that you wanna say? People to find you, mixes you've got archives, stuff like that.
Yeah, you can go check out my Mixcloud. I got a bunch of stuff up there. It's to be updated, so I guess you would look up DJ Mr. Brown 2, and that'll be me. So there's a bunch of stuff there, a lot of live stuff. I like to record a lot of live stuff. To me, there's more energy in live music than any sort of pre-record aspect. So I always carry a recorder with me, and I record everything I do. I don't put them all up, but I do try to record it all, so you can go back and listen to it and see where, you know, what have you. But I guess I would send a shout out to like the Prophecy crew, Scott Free, Polaris, Valiant. Obviously, my big brothers, Marcus and Lush, Mystical, Sniper, all the guys that sort of took care of me and got me going. Demonic, there's one. I got a good demonic story for you.
And then I'll tell you my thing. Go.
All right, cool. Do you remember? Okay, so I think it was when I first met you back in Eastern Bloc. I was the sound clip guy while you guys were working in the front. And I believe you worked at Eastern Bloc too, didn't you?
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, I thought so. That's where we met, man. So, anyways, they had a mixtape contest, and they were throwing a show at Roxy Blue with Cause for Concern. The winner of the mixtape contest got to open. So for me, I got lucky. I won the contest, so I got to go and play the show. And to me, it was like my big break. I hadn't played a big show before, never played in front of like a real crowd before, or got booked by somebody else before. So I'm like, I'm going in, man. I'm gonna go right in. And I brought all the shit and I just started going to town. And it's like 9:30. Bartenders are cutting limes. I'm like, my hands are in the air. I'm ready to go. So by the end of it, I'm just like, look, I'm just gonna give it my all, man. Because if this doesn't work out, at least I had one good show, and if it does work out, we'll see. And I had no idea about the etiquette, so because you're always learning with this music, you're always learning. And I remember Dan came up to me afterwards, and he just shook
Demonic
his
Dan.
head, demonic, yeah, just the way he does, he just like no. And he kind of pulled me aside and was kind of like, yeah, you can't do that. That's not how it works. And I fought him on it. I fought him on it for years, man. It was because he gave me a bad review once on Tribe for my mixtape. Told him I'll never forget you for that, man.
You
But
know,
anyways, here
you
we
know,
are.
the man knows.
He does.
The
He
man
does.
knows, and we're gonna know more about Dan because I've got demonic actually on the show in January.
You ask him why he bullied me that much, man. Dan, no, actually, Dan's an awesome dude, and we still chat a lot. And
Good.
I'm really thankful for the direction that he helped me with over the years, for sure.
So many people.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dan has been in front of the scene and behind the scene for decades.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
He's done more than people actually
I
know.
yeah I
So,
don't think people realize. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Dan has some stories. I
oh,
can't
yeah.
I can't wait to hear them. But we're not.
I,
But listen, we've got to get running because, well, I love you very much.
that's it.
Yeah,
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 man.
and I know that you've got places to go, people to be, and people
All
to
good,
see.
man. Today was all about you, man. So I'm
Oh
good to
man,
go.
I appreciate you so much. Thanks a
Thank you,
lot for
man.
joining us here at the Utility Room,
Thank you
sharing
for
with us
having me,
as
man.
well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. And, big shouts to everybody that's locked into your crowd. And thanks for putting up with me.
Anytime. Mr. James
Awesome.
Brown, thank you very much for being with us in the Utility Room. My name is Jello.